Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. This is Tim Harris, and this is the world's greatest agent interview, though I have a twist for all of you today. We have Brooklee Han from HousingWire, and Brooke is going to share with all of us some information that Julie and I have been, I think, touching on during the daily podcast with regards to the changes that are happening with online lead generation. And Brooklee was kind enough, frankly, to be on the podcast and share with us all the things that she knows, saving Julie and I countless hours trying to figure all this out ourselves. So Brooklee, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite.
And so Brooke is, if you want it, Julie and I, Julie contributes occasionally to HousingWire, but we read Brooke's articles all the time on HousingWire because she does a great job. Her and Chris do a great job of drilling down on some very specific wonkish real estate topics that it seems like nobody else wants to talk about. And Brooklee, I have to say, if all the things that people are talking about right now with regards to the commission sharing lawsuits and all these other things, this one topic is, in my opinion, perhaps the biggest topic that nobody's talking about that could have the most profound impact on the real estate industry. So what are we talking about? What's the change?
Sure. So this past December, the Federal Communications Commission adopted a new series of rules that cracks down on robocalling and texting. And that on the surface doesn't feel like it has a big relation to the real estate world, but in fact it does, because the new FCC rules allow the FCC to red flag certain phone numbers, requiring mobile carriers to block text from those numbers. It also codifies that the do not call list also applies to text messages, making it illegal for marketing text to be sent from two numbers on the do not call registry. But also kind of the most important thing for the real estate world is that the FCC has closed what it calls the lead generator loophole. So as it currently works, if you click a button that's like contact agent or whatever on Zillow or something, then your phone number and contact information goes out to all the Zillow Premier agents kind of serving that area, and whoever's the first to jump on it, or multiple agents may jump on it, can contact you without any, additional consent being given other than your consent of saying, please contact me, someone. Whereas now under the FCC rules, you have to give a person or an entity specific permission to contact you. So you could say contact agent, but it would be a specific agent. It wouldn't be kind of like a blanket approach to everyone being allowed to contact you. And that is definitely something that, these listing portal sites, something that Zillow is going to have to adjust to if they haven't already.
We're using Zillow as an example, but Realtor.com does it that way. Trulia still does it that way. And so let me describe what I think you just said, and you tell me if I'm wrong. So basically the past experience that a consumer would have, and this isn't just real estate sites, this is any kind of website, that's essentially you're going to fill out a lead form. So I would pop on a lead form, or I'd pop on a website today to find out about, roofing repair, right? I want information about somebody to give me an estimate on repairing a roof. Well, I put in my name, my phone number, all my contact information. And the way it currently works, and it's worked, this way really since the late 90s, is that information then could be sold to a million different roofers. It could even be sold to people that aren't even in the roofing industry. It could be sold to, real estate agents or home contractors or whatever. So that information could be packaged up and resold many, 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 many times. And if I understand what you just said, the new law is basically going to be put into place where it can't be resold and sold and sold. The consumer, it has to actually choose from the pull down menu. Like I'm putting in my information for the information on the roofer. I'm going to have, and again, if I'm saying this wrong, correct me, but I'm going to have to go and decide which roofer I want to actually have my information shared with. Is that what you said?
Yes, exactly. So it would be akin to, like, if we're using the roofing example, going to the 5 different roofers in your that serve your area and filling out a contact form on each of their websites and giving each roofer specific permission to contact you. And, by giving one roofer permission, that doesn't give the other 4 permission. So you have to specifically pick and choose exactly who your information is going to. Which, I definitely understand from a consumer protection standpoint for sure.
So you're saying visually, when a consumer lands on, we'll go back to Zillow because they're fun to pick on. So when a consumer lands on Zillow and they're then filling out information, wanting to know about this house, the experience is going to be, well, you filled out the information to find out about the house, and then someone's going to follow up with you. But the enhanced experience is going to be, you fill out the information to find out about the house. And then what happens, Brooklee, from what you're understanding, is it literally going to have another sub menu where you then have to actually choose which agents that you want to have your information shared with? Is that what you're saying you think is going to happen?
I think that is definitely a solution that they may drive to. It depends on what some of these listing portals decide to do and how to kind of navigate this shift. But, that would definitely be one way to do it for sure. But the thing is, then if you're a consumer and, really, maybe you're new to the area and you don't know anyone and you don't have any recommendations for a real estate agent, then you don't know, unless you're doing independent research prior to that, you don't necessarily know who you're agreeing to share your information with, which is the same as what you're doing now. But under these new rules, you then have to make an additional choice of exactly who you want to share that with.
What do you think consumer behavior will be when faced with that choice?
um Maybe there'll be an option where you can just say give permission to everyone. And I think a lot of consumers may choose that route. Others may, choose to do that extra legwork and do that extra research. But then again, I also know a lot of consumers, meet their real estate agent via recommendation from family member or friend, or, it's some type of connection. And so, I definitely know there are some agents and teams, especially that run really successful operations by purchasing leads from lead generators. But I also know a lot of agents and brokers and teams that don't feel that that is an effective way to build their business, and a very cost effective way of doing business as well. So we'll see how that goes. But I think, moving forward, maybe we'll see less teams or less um, agents kind of build their businesses off of lead generation sites, and having to do things more the old school way of farming or using their sphere of influence or social media as well. So there may be a shift to more of that instead.
I think you're right. That's the conclusion Julie and I came to as well. People are going to get back to having, real communication with folks. But so I wrote, this is important. I think that, and again, if I'm wrong about this, tell me I'm wrong. This change in the law does not pertain to an individual agent who's creating their own website for the sake of lead capture, and the leads are only going to them. It's only for the big portals where they're just selling the leads, basically, correct?
Correct. Because if you're, it could be different for a brokerage, where like you're giving, permit right now, you'd give permission for any broker or any agent within that firm to contact you. If we're doing like a small local independent, let's say, maybe any agent could contact you. But under these new rules, the way I would interpret it, you would have to give a specific agent within that brokerage permission to contact you. So if you're, an agent and you have your own website and you have a contact me tab, like, yeah, because you're the one directly contacting that person and they're the ones who gave you the permission. But if it's a brokerage website and someone's filling out a contact form, they're probably again going to have to say, I give permission to, agent X, agent Y, and agent Z to contact me, versus, all the agents at the firm.
I'm trying to think if I were in that scenario, what my choice would be is to choose none of them and probably not give my information, honestly. If I were in the choice, if I were in a facing down having to choose from a bunch of randos that I don't know, I'm probably not going to choose any of them. I can't imagine that's not what's going to be. Then that's what that's what you're guessing too.
That's kind of what I'm guessing too, because it's just, and consumers want things to be seamless and easy. I mean, that's one of the conversations I have all the time with people in the industry is that you want the least number of hurdles that the consumer has to work through, to get to the end transaction. And this is right at the beginning when already, people are a bit trepidatious about kind of this whole experience. And, it's been in the news a lot with all the commission lawsuits. And so people may be already a little bit more skittish. And then now it's like, all right, now I have to make a decision right off the bat of like who I want to work with or who I want to potentially contact me. And, so again, I think those agents that work off of referral business and, have that big sphere of influence and have that steady stream of business, this isn't going to be a big deal for them. And they, that will probably be the way more business is done in the future, just based off of these rules.
No, I agree. And as I forget, yeah, I'm sure you have all this memorized, but something like 60% or something like that. After someone's been in the business for 5 years, like 60% of all their business comes from centers of influence and past clients. And a lot of agents, and this is something else that's interesting, open houses now, because of all the online lead generation, people are moving away. Consumers have, I think, become distrustful of a lot of the stuff they're finding online as far as sources of information, or they're not finding all the information. And they know when they drive through neighborhoods, they're seeing signs that they're not seeing on Zillow or Realtor.com or whatever. So I really think this will be an interesting twist back towards a skills-based approach to the real estate business versus just basically buying your business. And I mean, it's an interesting end of a cycle that I think we're experiencing. And the other thing I was thinking, Brooklee, is the cost per lead is going to go through the roof. So if you're Zillow and you're realizing that the consumer is choosing nobody, it's because they don't like choice. Like you said, it's an inelegant solution to have to pull down a bunch of names from people you don't know, and it just won't work. That means that they're going to probably end up having to have more relationships with individual agents, which means they'll generate fewer leads, and the cost of those leads will go through the roof. Have you studied that theory?
Not really, but one thing that is interesting is like historically, agents could just sign up to be, a Zillow Premier agent, but in a lot of markets, Zillow is moving to its Flex program. I'm not sure if that's still what they're calling it. But these are agents that it's like an invite only program, and agents receive leads from Zillow, but they only pay for those leads if the transaction successfully closes. And there are some markets now where that is the only option available. Zillow started rolling that out, I want to say in spring of 2022 in like 2 markets. I think it's expanded to a couple other markets. But so, they may have already been in some ways preparing for something like this by building those deeper relationships with that smaller cohort of agents in those markets, and, testing out how things work there. I know, Zillow has been very open with kind of its pilot programs and everything it's been experimenting with since, moving out of iBuying in, what was that, November of 2021. So it's, they definitely have a space where, if they want to try a couple of different solutions to this problem that they're going to have soon, they definitely, they have a place where they could test out some of these things. And I think, as a firm, they definitely feel to me like one that would be willing to, just try some things and see what happens. I don't know if how Realtor.com's model kind of compares with that. But, they, may also be experimenting or thinking about, making some shifts as well.
So Zillow Flex is, they charge a 40% referral fee. So, and you're right, that's what they did. They moved to the Zillow Flex model. Well, most of the large teams that Julie and I are associated with, they get their leads, a lot of them, they get their buyer leads from Zillow Flex. But what's happened is that during this time of commission compression, just because the nature of the market, not even the commission sharing lawsuits, but just the nature of the market over the last, say, 5 years, where buyer agent commissions, they're no longer 3%. In some markets, they're less than 2%. And when you factor in a 40% referral fee and all the other associated expenses, and someone's giving that lead to an agent, we're seeing, and this started happening maybe 2.5 years ago. We would get calls from teams with had a lot of buyer agents, and the team leaders were Zillow Flex agents in a lot of cases, and they not done the math, and they were losing money on the buyer side transactions. So they were buying these leads from, it doesn't matter. And then after they paid the buyer agent, paid the associate expense, paid the whatever, they're literally losing money. So the whole side of the business for a lot of these large teams and these team broker, hybrids, is unprofitable. They're losing money on essentially this value prop of buying buyer leads, which goes back to what you said about people are going to have to go back to boots on the ground approach to lead generation so they can move away from these referral fees. So that's a really good point. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts? I got a sense that you had a spike of creativity while I was blathering on there.
No, I mean, kind of going off of your point about, that more skill-based approach for agents and kind of boots on the ground marketing. I mean, that has been obviously the center of a lot of conversation for what's going to happen, with this new world we're heading into with the NAR settlement agreement, if that all, excuse me, comes to fruition in November. And so I think, this is in some ways an expansion on that.
Yeah, me too. And the combination of these things all happening within the next, 9 months. Brooke is suffering from allergies, so listeners and viewers, give her a break. She's doing a great job, and trust me, this is our reschedule of our interview because the first time she had completely lost her voice. So thank you, I appreciate it. So if you have to sneeze, don't worry, we're forgiving you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Let me just play this back ever so slightly, because you actually said something that I didn't know. You're saying there was a codification of the do not call rule that now applies to text as well. So can you explain more about that? Because honestly, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the do not call list, the way it was made was a do not call list, like don't call me. But obviously in this day and age, in addition to calls, we have text messages. And it was kind of fuzzy gray area if you were on the do not call list, if you could then receive text messages instead of calls. And so this codifies the fact that if a number isn't on the do not call list, that also means don't text them with marketing texts.
Right. So that is going to be interesting. I'll just thinking off the cuff here. Because you got my mind going in a million different ways. Because the ramifications of the three things that you and I just talked about are far reaching. And like I said, I think it's more significant than the commission sharing lawsuit. So bear with me as I work out this thought. If you are an agent or a broker who has a lot of people in your CRM, and I'm going to shift and talk about the commission sharing lawsuit, which I know you know a lot about too. And now you're required to have some sort of formal buyer agreement before you're allowed to give that person, any sort of listing information. So they're in your CRM, you have 500 people in your CRM, a gathering of people, they all get drips, emails, texts. They're getting little videos, they're getting all this information, new listing information. Am I correct that technically, as of August 17th of this year, that if you don't have a formal agreement with those buyers or those leads, that you can't solicit them anymore?
No, that is not correct.
Okay.
So you have to have a formal buyer agreement in place prior to going on a tour.
Oh, got it.
So you can, if I'm, the listing agent and I'm at an open house and a bunch of buyers walk through and they want information about the property, because I'm functioning as, on behalf of the seller.
Yeah.
Yeah, with fiduciary duty to the seller, I can provide that information to the buyer, and show them around and everything because I am not working for the buyer. So I don't
Mhm.
have to have an agreement with that person. Um, I can provide information on, listings in the area to someone that contacts me that's a buyer. And, we can discuss what they want, what they're looking for, what neighborhoods they might want to, be interested in. I can do all of that without having a formal agreement. But once that buyer says, all right, you've shown me some different options in the area in terms of like things that we could look at. I've seen some stuff on realtor.com or on Zillow that I feel like there's inventory out there. I've gotten pre-approved for this much. I feel like, yeah, I now like want to actually seriously start looking. And, I want to go, I have time this weekend and I want to go see 3 houses or whatever. At that point, then the buyer's agent has to be like, all right, that's great. I'm excited that you want to go on this journey with me, but we need to, sign document to, basically define our relationship. And, there has been a lot of discussion and what that could be. Some people are thinking about or experimenting with like a week-long trial contract where like, we'll work with you this week, we'll go on some tours, and if we don't feel like the relationship is working, then the contract's done and you can go find someone else. And if, you feel like the relationship is working, then we can sign like a formal, like really truly define the relationship agreement. So, a lot of dating analogies have been thrown around with all of this, but yeah, it's when you specifically have to have that agreement in place is when you go to tour a house.
Thank you. That actually helps. That I think there's a collective sigh of relief with your very detailed explanation. So that was great. So how do virtual tours factor into all of this?
Oof, that is a good question that I don't know the answer to. I honestly have not heard that one brought up, but that is a really good point. I'm assuming like if it's a 3D tour on, that's part of the listing, then like that's part of the marketing collateral. But if, I live where I live in Southern New Hampshire and I'm looking to buy a house out in Seattle, if I am having my agent, take me on a live FaceTime tour of a property in Seattle, then yeah, I probably am going to have a buyer representation agreement in place.
I don't, you saw this, I'm sure, but NAR's got 100 frequently asked questions about this very topic. 100. I'm sorry, if you have to have 100 FAQs, I don't know what the hell that is. I mean, maybe 5, right? So well, that was one of the questions. And Julie and I were talking about this on the podcast, and we're like trying to go, like what you were just trying to work it through in your brain, like how would this even work? I mean, it's so wackadoo, you know? Well, I think everyone can agree is that when these rules are put in place, whether it's about the lead generation stuff or whatever, it's not the end of the conversation. There's going to be the start of the conversation, and there's going to be changes, and there's going to be, it's going to have these things. They might seem a little, draconian now, but they'll evolve and become, I think, a lot more adaptable. But it is fascinating. All these things were put in place to, be more consumer friendly, if you want to call it that, or protect the consumer. It just confuses the hell out of the consumer. It just does. It's so weird.
It's very confusing. This process is already pretty confusing to begin with for a lot of consumers. But I think, there will be increased transparency, more conversations about, how agents are getting paid exactly, what the agent is providing as services, to that home buyer or home seller. And I think that'll be good because, you as a home buyer or seller, you have a better idea of what exactly you're expecting. And I think already, at least for me, if I was in that position, that would help like, smooth out and help deal with some of that anxiety because there are so many unknowns in the process, I think, for a lot of people, especially first time home buyers or even first time home sellers. And, knowing more about the process, I think will definitely help with that a little bit.
I agree. And it is going to formalize so a lot of agents, when they get into the business, they choose to work with buyers. because working with buyers is basically physical labor, you know, and it doesn't require, agents hate it when I say this, but it's still true. Compared to working with sellers, it really doesn't require them much skill because they either like the house or they don't like the house. And as long as you don't make them car sick and don't get lost on the way to the showing, you're probably going to find a house for them. So not a lot of skill necessary by comparison to working with sellers. But now what's happened is it's going to shift so that you're going to have skills to work with the buyers to get them to want to work with you. And you were kind of alluding to it a second ago. You're going to have to express to them what your value proposition is. Why would they want to work with Brooklee? Why is it that she's really an expert in this particular area, knows all these different facets of it all? And if you can express that effectively, don't be surprised if you're not going to have agents or rather consumers that are going to want to work exclusively with you. You know, if Brooklee's sister, you know, is great at explaining it and great at basically convincing folks that she's the person to work with, then, you know, you're going to be, it's again, we're going back to what you and I were just talking about. It's leaning back into skills. It's fascinating. You know, Julie and I have been in this business since we were in our early 20s, and it's been so incredible to see these big trends come and go, come and go, come and go. And now we're seeing all these things that are starting to evolve into something that's yet to be defined. So I sincerely appreciate your time today. I don't want to make you, I don't want to overstress your voice. Is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't? Any other things that you think would be important that the listeners hear or know?
I don't think so. I mean, I think really the big takeaway is no matter if we're talking about FCC rule changes, if we're talking about commission lawsuits, if we're talking about, you know, the fact that in a lot of areas, the market is a lot slower than it was in, you know, 2021, we're moving to more of a skill-based housing market ecosystem that we're going to all be part of. And so the agents that are going to thrive are the ones that really, you know, have those skills. And it's not saying that agents who are newer or less experienced, you know, can't develop those skills. They absolutely can, but building those skills and kind of, you know, relying on them is definitely going to be incredibly important moving forward, no matter how you slice it.
I think the newer agents, to your very valid point, are actually going to have an advantage, Brooklee, because they don't have to unlearn. They're not going to have to. A lot of people are going to be very resentful of having to change the way they've been doing business forever. They're not going to, oh, I don't want to do this for them. I'm not going to do. They're going to look for shortcuts. They're going to look for gray areas. Where you take a new agent that doesn't know any better and you plug them into something that's going to be, this is how it's done. This is what you say. This is how you do it. They're actually going to be the most adaptable. So, you know, getting back to what this change is going to allow for, it could just be a whole new generation of people that start dominating the real estate industry because they're willing to evolve, kind of like what's going on with AI and all the rest of it. It's exciting to watch.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening or watching, don't wait to find out. Just take action now and implement all these things we're talking about. And if you build a business that's dependent on buying leads, I think we kind of talked about what might be happening in your future. So maybe lean back into learning how to be a proactive lead generator. Well, not maybe, definitely. And as far as, you know, the commission sharing lawsuits and all that, that's good. You know, I actually have a bonus question for you. Are you okay with that? Okay. Okay. This is totally out of left field, not about either of those two topics. All right. I'm not trying to make you nervous, but maybe a little bit. So what do you think this will do to the total number of members of the National Association of Realtors, these two changes alone?
I honestly don't know if the FCC rule change will have that big of an impact, but overall, I definitely, you know, we've already seen it with the market slowdown. We've seen compression in the number of agents. But then, you know, the general conversation around kind of this shift to more of a skill-based market is more casual agents will definitely filter out. As you know, alluded to as well, there are a lot of agents that were already contemplating retirement that are just like, you know what? I was 2 years out from retiring anyway. I don't feel like dealing with all this drama. I'm just going to retire now. You know, we might see we already are seeing, but we may see more of those people drop out as well. And then, you know, we may see some that try to make it in this new environment. And, you know, I don't know exactly what this future will look like. And for whatever reason, you know, maybe their skill set isn't, you know, what's needed, or maybe in their particular market, things are just tougher. Because there are some markets right now that are really slow compared to others. And, you know, these changes might just push out some of those agents that aren't quite, you know, all the way up to the top tier. And then, you know, but those younger, hungry agents that really want to make it, you know, that's always been the case. agents that really, really want it, that really want to be successful, are able to adapt and thrive no matter what changes are thrown their way, whether it's a market shift, whether it's, rule changes like these that are coming. Agents that have that mindset and have that grit and determination, I think will, continue to be successful. And, you know, those will be the bulk of the membership that we'll see, remaining at NAR, or just in the number of agents in the industry in general.
I agree with 100% of everything you just said. Makes perfect sense. And really there are so many people that are wanting to buy real estate and the numbers are just going to increase. It's just demographic trends, pure and simple. That's it.
Mhm.
And the lack of versatility and adaptability of certain agents, that doesn't necessarily have to be predicated on their age, but let's be honest, it probably will be. They'll obsolete themselves because they're not willing to adapt and change. The same thing's going to happen with AI and all these other types of things, right? And that is going to create the demand for housing is only going to increase by an enormous amount. And the reluctance for agents to adapt to change, just like every other human, is that's going to definitely be the end of some agents' career paths. But what's going to happen is it's going to open the door for an enormous new generation of agents. We keep saying younger, but Julie and I are seeing a lot of people that are retiring, military, retiring airline pilots, or certainly a lot of retiring teachers. You're going to see a whole new wave of people that are going to get into the business, which I think is going to be better for the industry on a whole, because they're going to come in and they're not going to have to unlearn what they, the bad habits they might have, and they're going to just step right in. And I think this is really what the system, the overall organized real estate industry really truly needs. It's kind of interesting how it's all happening at once, but
Yes, it definitely is all happening at once, but I think, there is a great opportunity for a new influx of perspectives and ideas from people from all walks of life coming into the industry. And I think that's, really exciting. Obviously, as time goes on, we'll figure out what works and what doesn't. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation in the industry, and I think that's going to be fun to watch for sure.
it is for sure. So Brooklee, I keep on saying Brooke, sorry. Brooklee, we really appreciate you doing such a great job reporting on all these articles. Like I said, on all these topics, like I said, you saved Julie and I countless hours of trying to figure all this out ourselves. So thank you for doing such a wonderful job. And thank you for HousingWire. HousingWire, Julie and I were just talking about that this morning. We hardly ever read anything else, real estate news, other than HousingWire, because you guys don't get mixed up in the drama. There's no drama. There's no blah, 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 blah. It's just facts. It's about the industry reporting real numbers, people who are not trying to be, I just really appreciate the effort you guys are all putting forth. It's wonderful, honestly.
You really appreciate hearing that. No, we're a pretty lean team over at HousingWire, but I feel like we really do a great job covering all facets of the industry. We have some fantastic reporters. I'm really lucky with all the people I get to work with on our team. And yeah, we're definitely excited about some of the big stuff we have coming. And we're excited to continue covering everything that's happening and all things housing.
Yes, exactly. So Brooklee, thank you very much for being my guest today. I really appreciate all your information, and keep up with the great work. If you need us for anything, obviously you know where to find us.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
And thank you, listeners. See you.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.